In September 1982, 7 people in the Chicago suburbs did the most ordinary thing in the world. They took Tylenol for a headache, a sore throat, a rough day. Within hours, all 7 were dead. Someone had walked into stores across the city, pulled bottles of Extra-Strength Tylenol off the shelves, laced the capsules with potassium cyanide, and put them back. No warning, no pattern, no motive anyone could find. And 44 years later, nobody has ever been charged. Netflix just dropped a new docuseries called Cold Case, The Tylenol Murders, and it is one of the most chilling things on the platform right now. Not because of who did it, but because we still don't know. This case didn't just terrify Chicago. It changed how every product in America is packaged. Those tamper-proof seals on your medicine bottles, your food containers, your drinks. That exists because of what happened in September '82. 7 random people, the youngest was 12, poisoned by a stranger who has never been caught. The Netflix documentary digs into the investigation, the suspects, and the daughter of one of the victims who has spent decades trying to find answers. This is the full breakdown. It started on September 29th, 1982, in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. 12-year-old Mary Kellerman woke up feeling sick, a sore throat, maybe a cold coming on. Her parents gave her a single Extra-Strength Tylenol capsule. By 7 a.m., Mary was dead on the bathroom floor. That same morning, 27-year-old postal worker Adam Janus collapsed at his home in Arlington Heights after taking Tylenol for chest pain. He was pronounced dead at the hospital that afternoon. Later that evening, and this is where the case turns into a nightmare, Adam's brother Stanley and Stanley's wife Teresa came to his home to grieve. Both of them had headaches. Both of them took Tylenol from the same bottle sitting on Adam's kitchen counter. Stanley, 25, died that night. Teresa, 19, died 2 days later. 3 people from the same family. 1 bottle. Within the next 48 hours, 3 more people died. Mary McFarland, 31, took Tylenol at work and collapsed in front of her co-workers. Paula Prince, 35, a flight attendant, was found dead in her apartment. Mary Reiner, 27, had just given birth to her 4th child a week earlier. She took a Tylenol for postpartum pain and never woke up. 7 people, 6 different bottles, purchased from different stores across the Chicago area, all laced with potassium cyanide, 65 milligrams per capsule, roughly 10,000 times the lethal dose. The investigation was massive. The FBI, the Illinois Attorney General's Office, the Chicago Police and local departments across Cook and DuPage counties all converged. Over 100 federal agents were assigned. Johnson & Johnson, the maker of Tylenol, issued a nationwide recall of 31 million bottles, the largest product recall in American history at that point. Investigators worked backwards from the contaminated bottles. They traced lot numbers, purchase locations, and store inventory. The critical finding was that the bottles came from different production facilities, meaning the tampering didn't happen at the factory. Someone had taken bottles off store shelves, opened them, removed capsules, filled them with cyanide, resealed them, and returned them to the shelf. That ruled out a disgruntled employee. This was someone who had access to potassium cyanide, knowledge of how capsules worked, and the patience to target multiple stores without being noticed. Police canvassed pharmacies and grocery stores. They reviewed security footage, what little existed in 1982. They ran background checks on anyone with a grudge against Johnson and Johnson. They followed tips by the thousands, and they landed on a suspect. On October 5th, 1982, less than a week after the murders, Johnson & Johnson received a handwritten letter demanding $1 million. The letter claimed responsibility for the poisonings and threatened more deaths if the money wasn't paid. It was signed Robert Richardson, but the return address led investigators to a man named James William Lewis. Lewis was a 36-year-old living in New York City with his wife Leanne. He had a long criminal history, including being charged with the 1978 murder of a 72-year-old man in Kansas City, though that charge was eventually dismissed. He'd fled to Chicago in the early 80s, worked odd jobs, and had been living in the area at the time of the poisonings. When investigators searched Lewis's background, they found he had both the means and the knowledge to pull off the tampering. He had a chemistry background. He'd purchased potassium cyanide before. He had financial problems and a history of fraud. Lewis was arrested and convicted, but only of extortion. The letter, not the murders. He was sentenced to 20 years and served 12 and a half. He always denied involvement in the actual poisonings. He claimed he wrote the letter to embarrass the real Robert Richardson, a man he said owed him money. The FBI named Lewis the prime suspect publicly, but they never had enough physical evidence to charge him with murder. No fingerprints on the bottles, no witness placing him in the stores, no cyanide found in his home. James Lewis died in July 2023 at the age of 76. He gave an interview for the Netflix documentary before his death, one of the last times he spoke publicly about the case. He maintained his innocence to the end. But Lewis wasn't the only person investigators looked at. The Netflix documentary also explores another name that has surfaced in recent years: Roger Arnold. Arnold was a Chicago dock worker who became a person of interest early in the investigation. He owned chemicals, had access to stores in the area, and was described by acquaintances as volatile and bitter. Arnold was never charged with the Tylenol murders, but in 1983, paranoid that a bar owner named Marty Sinclair was talking to police about him, Arnold shot and killed a man he mistakenly believed was Sinclair. He was convicted of that murder and served 15 years. The documentary also examines the theory that the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, may have been connected. Kaczynski was living in the Chicago area in 1982 and had expertise with chemicals. The FBI investigated this angle, but ultimately found no evidence linking him to the Tylenol case. Kaczynski died in prison in 2023, the same year as Lewis. Despite decades of investigation, grand jury proceedings, and DNA testing on the contaminated bottles, no one has ever been charged with the 7 murders. The case remains officially open. What happened after the murders might be as important as the case itself. Within weeks, Congress passed the Federal Anti-Tampering Act of 1983, making it a federal crime to tamper with consumer products. Johnson & Johnson, under the leadership of CEO James Burke, made a decision that became a case study in crisis management. Instead of downplaying the crisis, they pulled every bottle of Tylenol from every shelf in America. 31 million bottles. $100 million in losses. Then they redesigned the packaging entirely. Triple-sealed bottles, tamper-evident bands, foil seals under the cap. Within months, the entire pharmaceutical and food industry followed suit. Those safety seals, you peel off your medicine, your juice, your protein powder. All of that traces directly back to September 1982. Johnson & Johnson relaunched Tylenol in new tamper-resistant packaging and offered deep discounts. Within a year, they'd recovered most of their market share. It's still taught in business schools as the gold standard for how a company should respond to a crisis. But for the families, there was no recovery. Mary Kellerman's parents lost their 12-year-old daughter. The Janus family lost 3 members in one day. Mary Reiner's newborn grew up without a mother. And no one has ever been held accountable. The Netflix documentary centers on one voice in particular, the daughter of one of the victims, who has spent decades pushing for answers. She's filed FOIA requests, tracked down witnesses, reviewed evidence, and publicly pressured investigators to keep the case alive. Her argument is simple. The evidence against James Lewis was stronger than what's been publicly acknowledged, and institutional inertia, combined with Lewis's extortion conviction muddying the waters, prevented prosecutors from ever bringing murder charges. The documentary also features interviews with retired investigators, forensic scientists and journalists who covered the case in '82. What emerges is a portrait of a case that was both ahead of its time in terms of public response and tragically behind in terms of forensic capability. In 1982, there was no DNA testing, no store surveillance cameras, no digital trails. The kind of evidence that would blow this case open today simply didn't exist. And now, with Lewis dead, and Arnold dead, and Kaczynski dead, the 3 most prominent suspects are all gone. If someone is ever going to be charged, the window is closing fast. The Tylenol case is one of those stories that stays with you, not just because of what happened, but because of what didn't. 7 people dead, no justice, and every time you twist open a bottle of medicine and peel off that foil seal, you're touching the legacy of this case. If you haven't watched Cold Case, The Tylenol Murders on Netflix, I highly recommend it. It's a deep, respectful, well-made documentary that doesn't sensationalize, it investigates. Let me know in the comments. Do you think James Lewis did it? Or do you think the real killer got away completely? Drop your theories below. If this is your first time here, subscribe and hit the bell. I cover cases like this every week, deep dives into the cases everyone are talking about. I'll see you in the next one.